Hey guys, it's time for my July wrap-up. I have 7 books. Well, okay, 6 books and 1 manga that I have read this month to share with you guys. The first 3 books I read this month were the Mortality Doctor series by James Dashner. This series follows a boy named Michael and his 2 friends and how they have to use their hacking abilities to help take down this evil computer program. Well, I guess you'd more like call him corrupt instead of evil. Sadly, that's pretty much all I can say about this trilogy without definitely spoiling something. Even if you didn't like the Maze Runner series, I still highly recommend that you pick up this series because this series, it blew my mind. My attachment to the characters was on Maze Runner series level, but the plot twists, they truly came out of nowhere and left me kind of speechless for probably about an hour after each book. The first book alone has this major plot twist at the end that, oh my god, I couldn't get over it, and I kept on questioning everything that had happened up to that point. And all I could think is, are you serious? This can't be happening. This isn't real. It was real, but then by the 3rd book, you're like, what is real? Is what's happening real? Is the real world even the real world? Are we in a program inside a program inside a program? What's going on? Truthfully, that was my mindset through the entirety of the 3rd book. Out of the entire series, I think the 2nd book is probably the slowest, and it took me the longest to read. But I truly loved all 3 of them. I forgot to look up my ratings for all these books before I started filming this video. I do this almost every time. I usually just cut out me actually searching for it. Come on, come on, come on. Goodreads, you're so slow. Okay. So I gave the first book, The Eye of Minds, a 5 out of 5 stars. I gave the 2nd book, The Rule of Thoughts, a 4 out of 5 stars. And then the final book, The Game of Lives, got a 4 out of 5 stars. The rest of these books I read for the Booktubeathon. The first one is Lucky in Love by Cassie West. And I actually got this book like a day or so before it actually came out, because for some reason my local library had a finished copy of this book on their shelf before release day, and I don't know why. I'm not even sure if that's allowed, but I'm gonna go with it. So this book follows a girl named Maddie who has basically planned out her entire future down to the minute. And her and her family are having a lot of money trouble. This money trouble leads to other problems, and it eventually leads to her making an impulsive move to buy a lottery ticket. And of course, it wouldn't be much of a book if she didn't win the lottery, and then a bunch of shenanigans happen from there. This book kind of frustrated me at several points because Maddie was kind of too trusting, and she went along with a lot of different ideas that other people had for spending her money. And she also thought that giving everyone in her family a bit of the money was going to solve all of their problems, or at least the big problems they were having. And yes, it did fix a few of them, but it seemed to cause new problems, and other problems were just buried for a little bit before they came out being bigger than when they started. And this book really does make you think of what would you do if you had won the lottery. And I think of all of the ways people would treat me differently if I had won the lottery. It makes me kind of want to move to a middle of the nowhere state and live where there's basically no population. Not that I don't live that way already, but even more vacant. And I think if I won the amount she won, I would probably split it in half, or at least give 1/4 of that money to my mom, because she's taking care of a handicap and she's fighting to be able to afford to take care of her with all of her health problems and everything else, and it's just new problems keep on cropping up, and she could really use the money to de-stress everything, really. I mean, that's the only thing it would do. It would be so she could afford to take care of my handicapped aunt, and she wouldn't have to worry about making the big payments for the house and vehicles and all of that. Yeah, you guys tell me in the comments below, what would you do if you won $30 million? I gave Lucky in Love a 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I have Haikyuu Volume 2. Story and art by Haruchi Furudate. I butchered that. I'm sorry, whatever your name is. This was a reread for me, and it's an ongoing series, but I've read everything that's been released so far online, but I like to have the physical copies of them, so I'm buying them slowly as they're being released in America. This is one of my favorite mangas, and it's also one of my favorite animes. The story follows a boy named Hinata who is really short but loves volleyball. And he makes up for his height by having incredible running and jumping abilities, which makes for some very surprising strategies. In this volume, Hinata and his team are having a practice match with his friend Kageyama's old team from middle school. And those teammates don't like him very much at all. But Kageyama has changed a lot since middle school, and he's learned to play differently than he used to because of Hinata. So where there would probably be a lot of conflicts, there's more or less just one-sided aggression. And really, this practice match is just a little taste of what goes on throughout the rest of the series. And I have to say, even though this isn't my favorite kind of artwork, I do really love it when the characters get scary. And then in the anime, they're even scarier. I gave this manga a 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. And this book, guys, oh my god, this book. I actually listened to the audiobook to read this book, and it was my first good experience with an audiobook, which has kind of encouraged me to pick up even more audiobooks, not only because I love the audiobook for this. It was a full cast of people doing the voices, and it's just so amazing and more emotional than I ever expected it to be. So if you haven't checked out the audiobook for this book, I highly recommend that you do. On the audiobook, I listened to probably the first 90 pages just in pure audiobook while I was working out and driving during the booktubeathon. But after that point, I actually sat down, opened the book, and I followed along as the audiobook was reading to me. And I felt like I got the full experience of this book that way. Especially in the more confusing or emotional pages, like this one here is a very, very emotional page, and I'm gonna start crying if I don't stop looking at it, so getting off that. But the book was fantastic. I was thinking that it would be a very fast read. It kind of was. It was like 11 or 12 hours of me listening to the audiobook. But the way it's written in a bunch of different forms of communication, I just figured it would read a lot faster. By the time I got really invested in the audiobook, I'm glad it was as long as it was, and I didn't want it to end. So this was the first 100% science fiction book that I've read. And when I say 100%, I mean the entire thing took place in space. And I mean, you could argue that their little home planet that they start on before all of this happens is technically not 100% in space, but I'm counting it as in space because that planet don't exist. So as my first sci-fi book, I had a great experience. Do I expect anywhere near this level of amazing each time I read one? No. For the rest of the series, yes. I really wish I could summarize this, but I wouldn't know where to start. So my advice for anyone who hasn't read this series but wants to is to just go in it completely blind, or even get the audiobook and just start listening to it. If you are better at reading the book, I would still listen to the audiobook while following along, because it is just amazing. Just give the audiobook a try. It blew my mind. But Illuminae got a 5 out of 5 stars. And the last book I read was More Happy Than Not by Adam Silvera. I don't know how to summarize this book, so I'm just going to read the back. 16-year-old Aaron Soto is struggling to find happiness after a family tragedy leaves him reeling. He's slowly remembering what happiness might feel like this summer with the support of his girlfriend Genevieve, but it's his new best friend Thomas who really gets Aaron to open up about his past and confront his future. As Thomas and Aaron get closer, Aaron discovers things about himself that threaten to shatter his newfound contentment. A revolutionary memory-altering procedure courtesy of the Leto Institute might be the way to straighten himself out. But what if it means forgetting who he truly is? My thoughts on this book. Let me begin by saying that if you have ever felt depressed or have ever wanted to commit suicide at any point in your life, even if you just had a brief thought of it, you never actually thought about it, don't read this book. Because this book should come with a trigger warning. It really, really should. Because if you're depressed, this book will take that depression and times it by 10, because it'll make you think of all of your personal insecurities and everything else and just make you more depressed on top of whatever else is making you depressed. And it'll probably also blow whatever you're depressed about into proportions. And can you tell that I felt a bit depressed, actually extremely depressed, while reading this book? Seriously, depressed almost doesn't even cover what I was feeling while reading this book. Don't get me wrong, I love the book, I love the message of the book, but so many negative feelings. And it also made me rethink ever wanting to forget something happened. And I think one of the best things about this book was the fact that it installed actual real fear in me along with the depression. But it's a fear of the fact that what is happening in this book could actually happen to you at any given moment. You take away the futuristic memory altercation surgery, or whatever they want to call it, you take that away and what's happening to the main character could still be happening to the main character. So where I normally am not scared at scary movies, or even if I read like a particularly creepy book like The Call, yeah, this book scared me where those won't. And that's because it's a real life thing that could happen to you at any point. It is also very sad and disgusting to think that people actually still act this way to gay relationships. This was a really, really good book, and I want more people to read it, but like I said, if you've ever felt depressed or if you struggle with depression, don't read this book, because seriously, I don't know if this book comes with a trigger warning, but it really should. But regardless, I end up giving this book a 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, so these are the 7 books that I read this month. And I'm so happy about this because I haven't really been reading like at all the past few months, and I really, really, really needed to read a lot. And since I read so much, I am now only 1 book behind on my Goodreads reading goal. So I'm hoping I'll be able to keep up this reading pace for the next few months, at least. And it makes me feel 10 times more accomplished to know that I finished these 4 books in a week. But this video has been going on for way too long, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!